The operation began in the bowels of the Chicago Federal Reserve, a fortress of granite and steel designed to be the most secure point on the map. Armored Unit 777 was parked in the high-security loading bay, its reinforced titanium hull gleaming under the harsh industrial floodlights. This wasn't a standard cash transit. The vehicle was carrying $40 million in used, untraceable currency designated for the industrial incinerators. The air in the bay was thick with the scent of ozone and the heavy metallic tang of the armored truck's idling diesel engine. The crew for this mission was hand-picked for their decades of unblemished service and psychological resilience. Senior guard Elias Thorne and his partner Marcus Vance had spent 20 years navigating the high-stakes world of armored transport without a single incident. They were locked into the cabin using a dual authentication biometric system that prevented the doors from being opened from the inside or the outside until the destination was reached. To the guards, this was just another routine Tuesday, a high-value milk run through the familiar gray streets of the Chicago Loop. Outside the truck, a team of federal dispatchers monitored every variable from a centralized command center. They tracked the vehicle's GPS coordinates with sub-meter accuracy, while a live satellite feed provided a continuous overhead view of the transit route. Every turn was pre-calculated, every stoplight was synchronized, and a kill switch was ready to shut down the engine at the first sign of a deviation. The system was designed to be a closed loop of absolute certainty, leaving no room for human error or external interference. As Unit 777 pulled out of the Federal Reserve at precisely 9:45 a.m., the city around it seemed to move in a coordinated dance of transit and commerce. The truck moved through the shadows of the skyscrapers, a fortified box of wealth that was invisible to the thousands of commuters passing by. The radio chatter between the guards and dispatch was minimal and professional, consisting only of status codes and location updates. On paper, the $40 million was already as good as destroyed, a mere mathematical formality moving through a concrete jungle. The route led directly toward Lower Wacker Drive, a subterranean network of tunnels and service roads that bypasses the congested surface streets. This section of the city is a maze of pillars and shadows, a place where the sun never reaches and the GPS signals begin to flicker against the heavy concrete overhead. The guards didn't hesitate as they descended the ramp into the darkness, their headlights cutting through the damp subterranean fog. They were entering the dead zone, a 2-minute stretch of tunnel where the world above loses sight of the world below. At exactly 10 a.m., the live video feed inside the command center dissolved into a wall of digital snow and jagged interference. The dispatchers didn't panic initially. The Lower Wacker Tunnel was notorious for its signal shadows, where the thick limestone and reinforced rebar create a temporary blackout. They watched the satellite map, seeing the pulsing green icon of Unit 777 hold steady at the tunnel's entrance before disappearing into the grayed-out sector. They set their stopwatches, expecting the signal to re-establish itself on the other side in approximately 90 seconds. Inside the truck, the guards experienced a sensation that Elias Thorne later described as a gentle, pressurized hum. The cabin's internal lights flickered once, turning a dim, bioluminescent green, while the radio emitted a soft, rhythmic static that sounded like falling water. Thorne looked at the rearview monitor, but the camera showed only a thick, swirling mist pouring out from the tunnel's ventilation shafts. He checked his dashboard clock, but the digital display had frozen at 10:01, its numbers vibrating slightly, as if caught in a localized magnetic field. Despite the technical glitches, the truck felt like it was moving at a consistent 40 miles per hour through the darkness. Neither Thorne nor Vance felt the vehicle come to a halt, nor did they hear the sound of the rear doors being engaged. They were cocooned in a soundproofed environment, unaware that the air pressure in the cabin was being subtly manipulated to induce a state of mild hypnotic disorientation. They sat in their armored seats, staring at the concrete walls passing by, convinced they were simply navigating the usual subterranean traffic. At exactly 10:02 a.m., the live GPS signal snapped back into existence with a sharp electronic chirp that echoed through the command center. Unit 777 emerged from the tunnel's exit ramp, moving at the exact speed and trajectory it had maintained before the blackout. To the dispatchers, it looked like a seamless transit. The truck had entered at one side and exited at the other within the expected time frame. There was no smoke, no damage to the vehicle's exterior, and no emergency transponders had been triggered. The mission appeared to be proceeding exactly according to the Federal Reserve's protocol. The truck continued its journey for another 15 minutes, eventually arriving at the high-security incinerator facility on the city's outskirts. The guards followed the standard arrival sequence, waiting for the facility's external gates to lock before attempting to disembark. It was only when the incinerator's ground crew moved to the rear of the truck that the anomaly was detected. The heavy-duty deadbolts were still perfectly engaged, but the truck sat noticeably higher on its suspension, as if the massive weight of the $40 million had simply evaporated into the air. The investigation began with the immediate detention of Thorne and Vance, but a forensic audit of the truck quickly cleared them of any direct involvement. The truck's internal thermal sensors, which are designed to detect the heat signature of a human body or a cutting torch, showed a flat, unchanging line for the duration of the trip. There were no signs of forced entry, no explosive residue, and the biometric locks had never been cycled. It was as if the money had been phased through the steel walls of the vault, leaving the physical structure of the truck completely undisturbed. Federal agents descended on the lower Wacker tunnel with high-intensity floodlights and ground-penetrating radar, searching for any sign of a struggle or a hidden exit. What they found was a masterpiece of clandestine engineering that defied the city's architectural records. A 60-foot section of the roadway had been modified with a fake overlay of reinforced fiberglass that looked identical to the surrounding asphalt. Beneath this overlay lay a series of industrial-grade hydraulic lifts capable of dropping an armored truck 30 feet into a hidden sublevel in less than 5 seconds. The team hadn't broken into the truck while it was on the road. They had moved the entire road out from under the truck. When Unit 777 hit the trigger plates, the hydraulic system lowered the vehicle into a pre-constructed chamber, while a second, identical empty shell was hoisted up to take its place. The guards were never in the tunnel during the blackout. They were sitting in a soundproofed box 30 feet below the ground, while a decoy truck exited the tunnel to lead the satellite trackers away. The mist the guards saw was actually a pressurized gas used to mask the mechanical movement of the lifts. In the sublevel chamber, the thieves had used a specialized vacuum lifting system to inhale the pallets of cash through a hidden hatch in the floor of the truck. This modification had been performed months earlier during a routine maintenance check, where a section of the truck's floor was replaced with a magnetically sealed plate. By the time the guards were hoisted back to the surface and sent on their way, the original $40 million was being loaded into a fleet of nondescript delivery vans parked in a connected sewer main. The entire swap had been executed in exactly 120 seconds. The level of precision required for such a maneuver suggested a deep cover operation involving engineers and city planners. The hydraulic system was powered by a diverted electrical line from the city's main power grid, and the excavation work had been masked by a series of authorized utility repairs. The investigators realized they weren't looking for street criminals or bank robbers. They were looking for a phantom crew that had the keys to the city's infrastructure. The heist wasn't just a robbery,
It was a perfect architectural surgery performed on the heart of Chicago. The FBI's focus shifted toward the utility crew that had been seen working in the tunnel for the 3 weeks leading up to the heist. They found that the crew had utilized forged city permits that were so accurate they had bypassed the digital verification systems of the Department of Transportation. These permits were linked to a defunct engineering firm that had been dissolved in the late 90s, yet the digital trail led to a series of encrypted servers in Eastern Europe. The workers had worn high-visibility gear and operated heavy machinery in bright daylight, hiding in plain sight behind a wall of bureaucracy. A sweep of the sub-level chamber revealed a sophisticated jamming array that had been used to create the signal shadow for the dispatch team. This wasn't off-the-shelf equipment.
It was military-grade hardware designed to mimic the natural interference of concrete and rebar, making the blackout look like a routine technical glitch. The thieves had essentially created a digital ghost of the truck, feeding the dispatchers a loop of pre-recorded sensor data while the real vehicle was being emptied below ground. The technology used was at least a decade ahead of the current federal tracking systems. The investigation uncovered a single high-tech encrypted drive left behind on a mounting bracket in the hidden chamber. When the feds bypassed the 3-layer biometric lock on the drive, they found it didn't contain bank accounts or names, but rather the personal schedules of every guard at the Federal Reserve. The drive included detailed logs of Elias Thorne's heart rate, his caffeine intake, and his reaction times during previous transits. The thieves had essentially profiled the guards to ensure they would react with the exact level of calm required to pull off the hypnotic disorientation during the blackout. The utility crew had also utilized a network of 500 ghost cameras installed throughout the tunnel system. These cameras were not connected to the city's grid, but operated on a private, closed-loop frequency that allowed the masterminds to watch the robbery from a remote location. When the feds tried to trace the signal, they found that the cameras were designed to self-destruct, their internal circuitry melting into a puddle of lead and plastic the moment the 12th pallet of cash was moved. Every piece of evidence was programmed to disappear the moment its function was complete. The signature of the hydraulic lifts was traced back to a custom manufacturing plant in Germany that specialized in heavy lift cinematics for the film industry. The plant had received an anonymous order for a mobile stage with the exact specifications of the Lower Wacker roadway, paid for in gold bullion through a shell company in the Cayman Islands. By the time the investigators arrived at the factory, the blueprints had been wiped from the servers, and the floor manager had vanished. The heist was a global effort, a symphony of engineering and digital ghosting that left the feds chasing shadows across 3 continents. Despite a 5-year investigation and a worldwide manhunt, not a single dollar of the $40 million has ever been recovered. The currency, which was slated for destruction, was never entered into the global banking system, suggesting it was either laundered through a series of black market commodity trades or buried in a location only the Phantom crew knows. The case remains the only Federal Reserve robbery in history where no suspects were ever identified and no physical evidence of a break-in was found. It is taught in forensic academies as the perfect heist, a lesson in the vulnerability of absolute systems.
The Lower Wacker Tunnel is now the most heavily monitored stretch of roadway in the United States, equipped with seismic sensors and permanent satellite uplinks that can see through concrete. Yet, for all the technology and surveillance, the city has never been able to find any other sub-level chambers or hidden modifications in its infrastructure. The Phantom Vault masterminds didn't just steal money, they proved that the city itself is a machine that can be hacked if you have the right tools. They turned the very foundation of the law into a trapdoor, and then they walked away. Elias Thorne and Marcus Vance were eventually forced into early retirement, the psychological weight of the 2-minute blackout leaving them unable to return to the field. Thorne still visits the tunnel once a year, standing at the entrance and watching the armored trucks disappear into the shadows. He claims he can still hear that pressurized hum whenever the wind blows through the ventilation shafts, a reminder that he was part of a ritual he will never truly understand. He isn't looking for the money, he's looking for the digital ghost of the truck he lost. The Phantom Vault case is officially inactive, a polite way for the FBI to admit that they have reached a dead end in the dark. The file is a collection of redacted names and unsolved engineering queries, a testament to a crime that was built rather than committed. The $40 million is now a ghost, a mathematical anomaly that exists only in the ledgers of the Federal Reserve and the legends of the Chicago underground. To this day, the masterminds remain anonymous, likely sitting in a world they built with the bones of a city they outsmarted. The story of the Phantom Vault ends not with a capture, but with a ticking clock. In the world of high-stakes crime, the stopwatch is the only weapon that truly matters. And for 2 minutes in 1999, the thieves owned every second of it. If you ever find yourself driving through the tunnels beneath Chicago and your radio starts to hiss with a rhythmic, watery static, don't check your GPS. Just keep driving and hope that the road beneath you stays exactly where it's supposed to be. The phantom is still in the walls, and the clock is always winding.
Motherfucking design all right now.